Hey dears, I hope you might be eagerly waiting what happened with Jody, whether he got the phone or not. And today I will tell you what happened with Jody actually, and whether his wish has been granted by God. So let's start the third part. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wondering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was querying, it made no effort to rise or run. Jody could not trust himself to move. He whispered, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. So, we are happy that Jody found the fawn. While he was walking in the jungle, while he was walking in the clearing, Jody got a surprised. Okay, Jody was surprised seeing the fawn in front of him, and the fawn was also startled to see him, and the fawn was even looking at him with a wide, wondering eyes full of liquid. And it was even querying means shaking slightly, and it was not in a mood to run nor rise. And Jody also could not trust himself to move. He was also startled seeing the fawn, and he whispered, "It's me." Jody is just telling to fawn that it's me. And what the fawn has done, it just lifted its nose and started scenting him, means smelling him. And he reached out one hand and laid on its soft neck. Jody is just touching on the soft neck of the fawn, and the touch was totally making the fawn excited, and he just moved forward on all fours, and he was just close beside it. Means Jody is just standing with his force, means putting the arms also on the ground, touching the ground and standing with the force, and he just moved beside the fawn, and he just put his arms around its body, means he was just like hugging the fawn. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. And while Jody touched the fawn got shivered, but it was not moving. He stroked its side as gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. Its skin was very soft, it was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply, they were surprisingly long, and he had to hose the fawn as high as possible under his arm. So here we can see the detailed description about what happened between Fawn and Jody. Jody was totally happy seeing the fawn, and he is just touching the fawn very gently as if it is like a china deer. China deer means a clay deer that will easily break. Okay, so if we are having something that will easily break, we will be very careful in touching that. Likewise, Jody was so gentle and smooth while touching the fawn. And the specialty of the fawn, its skin was extremely soft, and it was very sleek and shiny, very smooth and shiny and clean, and had a pleasant smell of grass. And he rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. So now Jody and fawn was just standing on the ground, and now he just took the fawn in his arms and he rose up, and its lungs hung limply. Limply means it was lacking stiffness. It was so tender legs, and it was having a very long lengthy legs, and it was like touching on the ground. So what Jody has done, he just lifted the fawn to the highest. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The fawn's legs caught in the bushes and he could not lift his arm with freedom. He tried to shield his face from prickling vines. Its head bobbed with its stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of his acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. So, in this paragraph, we can see the journey of Jody and Fawn. They are just moving towards Jody's home. And Jody was a little bit afraid that he might be kicking and bleating. Bleating means a weak cry that is made by the deer, the goat, and the sheep. Okay, he might be crying while seeing the dead body of his mother, because on the way he had seen the dead body. The carcass of the doe was seen on the way, so he was afraid whether seeing the body of his mother, the fawn might be crying and he might even kick him. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. Thicket means a dense area of bushes or small trees. That is called a thicket. So he was just making the way in that area and they were just moving into the thicket, and it was difficult to fight through with his burden. Means now he is having a weight in his arms, that is he is just carrying the fawn, and it was so tough for him to clear the area in order to travel with his arms that is already occupied. The fawn's legs caught in the bushes and he could not lift his arm with freedom. And what happened with the fawn's legs? It was just caught in the trunks of the small trees, and it was so difficult for him to even lift it. And he tried to shield its face from prickling vines, and they were like prickling vines. Prickling vines means the vines that are having the thorns in it. So in order to protect the fawn from these prickling vines, Jody just kept his palm in front of the fawn's face, and its head bobbed with its stride, and his heart thumped with the marvel of his acceptance of him. So he was totally fine. The fawn was totally fine with the company of Jody, and Jody was also feeling so good of it. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. So now they were just moving towards their home, and all the way Jody was just carrying the fawn, and he was also feeling heavy because obviously the animal might be heavy one. So he was also feeling so tired, and he was just sitting in a place where the forest road is just intersecting with the road towards the home, and he stopped there and he just sat down and kept the fawn on its legs, and it wavered on them. Wavered means move in a quickly way. Okay, and it looked at him and bleated. The fawn has looked at him and bleated means cried, a weak cry, that is called bleated. He said, "Enchanted, I will carry you after I get my breath." So now Jody is telling to the fawn, wait, enchanted. Enchanted means extremely delighted, charming. Okay, I will carry you after I get my breath means I am very tired. When I am okay, I will again carry you in my arms. He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. He started away slowly. The fawn stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his son. He was light-headed with his joy. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it. So now Jody was taking rest along with the fawn, and he is just remembering the words told by his father. Means father told him, if you have carried a fawn in your arms, after a while the fawn will be following you. So he also did the same. Okay, he was just practicing it, and initially the fawn was not following him, he was just looking at him. And again Jody came back to him and stroked it and walked away again. Stroked means moving once and gently over anything. Okay, he just touched the fawn and again he walked away. And now the fawn took some wobbling steps. Wobbling means move unsteadily. Okay, and in a particular direction he was just moving unsteadily towards him, and he was crying very piteously, and it was willing to follow him, and it belonged to him. It was his son. He was lightheaded with his joy. Lightheaded means unable to think clearly. He was overjoyed. He doesn't know what is happening around him. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call it to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. So again, now Jody was so happy seeing the fawn is coming behind him. He is following him. So what he has done, he just play with him and call him to come to his home. And he dared not alarm it. Alarm means frighten. He doesn't want to make it frighten. So again he picked it up and carried it in front of his arms, and it seemed to him that he walked without effort. Now he is not feeling any heaviness in his arms. He is feeling very effortless. His arms began to ache and he was forced to stop again. When he walked on, the fawn followed him at once. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. The distance home was nothing. He could have walked all day and night and into the night carrying it and watching it follow. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom, with the fawn walking behind him, but at the steps the fawn barked and refused to climb them. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. In this paragraph we can see Fawn and Jody reached their home. Okay, and on the way he was always carrying the fawn in his arms, and he was getting ache in his arms. He was getting pain in his arms, and so after walking a little distance, again Jody is taking the fawn in his arms, and it was a huge distance to the home, but it was not a great thing for him because he was totally happy and he was having the energy to walk all day and night carrying the fawn in his arms, and he was even sweating. Okay, but the cool breeze of this June morning just cooled his body, and the sky was pretty clear, and the spring water, it was just like the spring water in a blue china cup. And now he came to the clearing, and it was very fresh and green after the night's rain. And he fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. Here now we can see Jody has reached his home, and he's just removing the latch, and he just managed to make the fawn settle over there. And then he got an idea that he will make the fawn walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom. But what happened actually? Fawn was unable to walk on the stairs. He doesn't know to walk on stairs. So what he did, he doesn't know to climb up. So he just took his in his arms, and he is just going towards his father's room. Penny's room means father's room. And by the time Penny was laying in the bed with his closed eyes, Jody called, "Pa, look." Penny turned his head. Jody stood beside him, the fawn clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the fawn's. He said, "I'm glad you found him." So right now, the fawn has met even Penny. And Penny was totally happy to see the happiness in his son's eyes, and he is told, "I'm very glad that you found the fawn." Jody then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen safe. The cream had risen on it. He skimmed the cream into a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn. It buttered it suddenly, smelling the milk. He saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. He could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. So now Jody is just going to the kitchen along with the fawn, and while he reached the kitchen, he had seen in a pan there is some milk, and even the cream is there on the top, and he just skimmed the cream and he just poured the milk into a small gourd. A gourd means a bottle made from the dried shell of bottle gourd. That is called the gourd. So he just poured the milk from the pan to the small gourd, and he just gave to the fawn. But what happened? It buttered it suddenly, smelling the milk. He just hit it suddenly. Okay, but Jody had saved the gourd very riskily, and now after pouring the milk into the gourd, we can't do anything with that gourd. Only we have to give to this animal. He dipped his finger in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him. He dipped his fingers again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. So now the fawn was unwilling to take the milk from the gourd. So what Jody has done, he just dipped his fingers in the milk and just thrust his fingers into the wet mouth of the fawn. And that time the fawn is sucking his fingers so greedily, and it was when he withdrew the fingers from his mouth, he started crying. So again and again Jody is doing the same thing for the fawn. He is just dipping the fingers in the milk and just thrusting his fingers into the wet mouth of the fawn. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently. As long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk, the fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamingly. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail fickled back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in the whirl of foam and gurgling. So right now we can see how nicely Jody was feeding the fawn. He just dipped his fingers in the milk and thrusted his fingers into the mouth of the fawn. And the fawn was so greatly sucking his fingers, imagining he is just sucking the milk from his mother. And while he is sucking, due to happiness, he is just stamping on the ground with the small hoofs. And as long as he was putting his fingers in his mouth, he was totally content. Content means happy, and it closed his eyes dreamingly. See, when the animals are sucking, or even the small infants are sucking the milk, due to happiness, they will be just closing their eyes. Likewise, the animal, the fawn, was also closing its eyes, and it was ecstasy. Ecstasy means overjoy. It was so happy for Jody when the fawn was touching its fingers, and its small tail fickled back and forth. It is all showing the happiness of the fawn. These are all the mannerisms. The last, the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. He just dipped his finger in the last drop of this milk, and even that last drop was sucked by the fawn. So this is all about the lesson. We can see a sensitive boy who always wishes the good for others, an altruistic person. He got a chance to help a non-human thing. He was so happy to look after an animal whose mother saved the life of his father. So I hope you understood the lesson completely and read the lesson thoroughly. Thank you.